Welcome back to Havens Cafe. Grab your overpriced designer coffee, grab a tea, pour yourself a little scotch if that's what you need. Today, we're going to do a short discussion on gold, war, economics, and finance. Okay, so what's going on with the price of gold? Price of gold has topped out, flatlined, all right? Every day, something interesting happens. It tests a boundary at about 5,200, and then there's a huge sell-off in the morning. And then at night, climbs back up. This is American time. Climbs back up, okay? So let's talk about the big picture, then we'll come back to the small picture. Now, this is very interesting and very fascinating and very sort of alarming too, right? Here we have not just one, but two major global events, okay? We have a war in the Middle East, and we have an energy shock, okay? And yet the price of metals has not risen, okay? Now, this is extremely strange, okay? Because in every previous oil shock and every previous war in recorded history, the price of metals has risen, if not skyrocketed, okay? So we have two kind of hypotheses here, all right? One is that Trump has broken human history, okay? And this is the first time in all of history we're facing an energy shock and a war. Either one of those alone should have been enough to cause the price of metals to skyrocket, all right? So this is what happened in the energy shock in the 70s, all right? It's what happened during the Gulf War, et cetera, et cetera. So either one of those alone should have been enough to cause the price of metals to rise. And it hasn't. So one hypothesis is that Trump has broken history, okay? Now, I find it hard to accept that 10,000 years of human civilization have suddenly come to an end because of Donald Trump, right? So you can accept that hypothesis if you want, by the way. I'm just talking it through with you, okay? Now, there's another hypothesis, and then beyond that, there's another hypothesis, which is a little more conspiratorial, but we'll come to that. So, second alternative is that the markets are in such an extreme degree of fear, they're not thinking straight, okay? And they're not thinking that if we are facing a huge inflationary wave, okay, then yes, metals are where you tend to store value, okay? Because even currencies across the world are going to get eroded, their value, by a huge inflationary wave, not least of all dollars, right? So the dollar is rising a little bit because oil is priced in dollars, and we've talked about that in previous videos, okay? But at the end of the day, even those dollars are going to get devalued by a huge inflationary wave. And you can think, right, the world before and after COVID. How much less are your dollars worth today after that inflationary wave? Now imagine another inflationary wave just like that, because that's what's on the cards now, okay? So second hypothesis is that markets are not thinking straight. They're in such an extreme degree of fear, they don't remember that during a huge inflationary wave, you do not want to hold currencies. You don't want to hold stocks. You don't want to hold bonds. You want to hold something that supersedes all of those as a store of value, okay? And at some point, that reality sets in, and then this delayed rise, there's a pent-up pressure in the rise of metals, and they begin to rise again. And we'll see if that's true, okay? Third hypothesis is where we get into a little bit of conspiratorialism, but I have to tell you, there are moments where I lean towards this hypothesis, is that there's something funny going on in the gold market, metals markets, because every day the same pattern has been taken hold for the last month or two, which is that as soon as the American markets open, bang, the price slides. And when the Asian markets open, the price rises. So what this tells us, maybe, or it begins to imply, is that somebody is intervening in the market. Now, there have been rumors that Scott Bessent, treasury markets, are intervening already in oil futures to try and keep the price artificially low. There's an article in the FT about that. I'm not making it up. You can look it up, okay? Is it possible that the same thing is happening in gold? That Bessent and the treasury guys are intervening in the gold market to try and keep the price of gold low? I don't know. Okay, but what I do know is that a lot of the standard explanations that are being trotted out make no sense, right? They're very amateur level explanations. So one of the explanations is that, well, the dollar rose by like, 0.5% or 1% or something, so the price of gold flatlines. Hey, does that make any sense? Is that a better explanation than in every war in human history and every energy shock in human history, metals have risen, if not skyrocketed? Well, of course not, right? The war and oil shock explanation is much stronger than, hey, gold, the dollar rose like 0.5%, so that flatlines the price of gold. That makes no sense, right? So a lot of these amateur level explanations do not hold water. They don't hold up. And there are moments where I lean towards the explanation that some kind of intervention or manipulation is going on in the metals markets, okay? Because again, this is a pattern that's gone on throughout human history, and suddenly it's broken at a time where it's very convenient for an administration who is already be rumored to be intervening in markets. I don't know, right? Very sketchy. So just a little discussion to keep you guys updated, all right? So that's just a little discussion about where gold is, geopolitics, finance, all of it. And I want you to try and connect those dots, okay? And keep them together in your heads. Because I know everybody's kind of like thinking about this these days. Where metals prices going, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We'll see which one of these three explanations proves true, okay? My money is on numbers 2 and 3, all right? That there's pent-up pressure and eventually metals will rise because markets are not thinking straight. And number 3, that there is some level of intervention and manipulation going on in the gold markets. Oh, and by the way, I'll say one more thing. We still know that countries around the world, right, are still adding reserves, gold reserves. China is still adding gold reserves, okay? Various countries in Europe are still adding gold reserves. So again, something seems a little bit fishy here. All right, so just a little update. Comments, questions, leave them below. Thank you for listening.